And I'm not trusting, and I'm not deliver this message. I felt I needed to do this. I know it's a little off topic. I know it's a little silly, but I was going to do it anyway. This is about Elvis Presley. I saw where they, on some podcast where they was promoting Elvis Presley still as the king of rock and roll, right? And I found it real funny, that, Caucasian people can call Elvis Presley the king of rock and roll when he was copying a black man named Otis Blackwell, a so-called black man, an American indigenous man. Look up Otis Blackwell, the man behind Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley copied this man's sound, like literally had this man writing music that, Elvis Presley put his name on allegedly, but not with the, but Otis Blackwell is not alleged. If you listen to Otis Blackwell, he was performing even in the 80s and whatnot. Elvis took his whole style. He would sing the songs that Elvis wanted to record, and he would teach Elvis how to sing like him. Okay. And Elvis copied this guy. Elvis copied his dance moves. Elvis copied everything from an American indigenous man, so-called black man, to repackage and give to white people. That was Elvis Presley's contribution to rock and roll, copying the so-called black man and repackaging it and then giving it to white people because racist Caucasians at the time didn't really want their children listening to American indigenous music, which was rock and roll, which came to be known as rock and roll. The first rock and roll song was made by Ike Turner, who, ended up becoming Ike and Tina Turner. But the first rock and roll song was made by him, Ike Turner, a song called Rocket 88. Right? And you had a lady by the name of Big Mama Thornton, because they used to, she sung that song first, you ain't nothing but a hound dog. And her version sound better than Elvis' version. But like I said, they like our music, but they don't like the people that's singing the music. All right, they don't like looking at us. That's all that represents. They didn't want their children acting like us, wanting to be like us, because what that is it exposes them for truly worshiping our image and our likeness. Why? Because our music is part of our image and our likeness, you see. And people never wanted, the people who are trying to project an image of supremacy never want to show that they really have a mindset of inferiority. Right? Because, why would you go and put Elvis up as the king of rock and roll and he didn't earn it? He didn't earn being considered any kind of king because he wasn't a natural talent. He wasn't a natural talent. He had to copy somebody else. That's like saying, you got a genius, taking a test, or you got a real intelligent child taking a test and scores high on SATs, but then the kid next to him cheats off of him, copies his answers, and he scores just as high. So do you consider them both, to be academically accomplished when one had to cheat off of the other? No, you don't. So you're rewarding Elvis as the king of rock and roll, that title of the king of rock and roll, when he did nothing but copy a so-called black man. Like literally everything. I could readily see people saying, white people putting up Jerry Lee Lewis, because Jerry Lee Lewis, he was just being his authentic, white self. And when he entertained, he wasn't trying to copy no so-called black people, at least not openly like Elvis did with Otis Blackwell. But Jerry Lee Lewis, I could readily see them putting up Jerry Lee Lewis before Elvis Presley, because Elvis Presley, like I said, he was true. He was just really a diversity, equity, inclusion rock star. That's what I call him. He was a D.E.I. rock star. Because what does diversity, equity, inclusion mean? That's, where they always accuse racist Caucasians, always accuse black people of being D.E.I. hires, where they say, oh, you was just given a job because you're a black person. Well, Elvis was made the king of rock and roll because he a white man, because he was a so-called white man. That's the only reason. Not because he was talented. And I'm not saying Elvis Presley didn't have some talent. He could copy people. I guess that would be a talent. But he copied the so-called black man named Otis Blackwell. So how you going to call him the king of rock and roll? And he didn't create rock and roll. Black people did. So-called black Americans, indigenous Americans created rock and roll. And he comes in And as a white male, because they like racist Caucasians, they like the music, but they want to hear a white person doing it. They want to see another Caucasian doing it. So if it wasn't for diversity, equity, inclusion with Elvis Presley, he might not never be where he is today. So shout out to the first D.E.I. rock star. Right? I found that, like I said, I found it real funny. Again, he's somebody who didn't truly earn his entertainment stripes. And for him to be one of the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they opened it, that's a slap in the face of the real people that created rock and roll, meaning our people. Think about that. You see, because, history will always try and lie, but it is up to us to correct history, his story. All right. So that's it. I just want to touch on this. I'm going to close this out, and I'm not trusting, and I'm not thinking, and I'm not in this message. Stay tuned for the next recording.